Hey everybody, it's been a long time since the last episode, so I apologize for the long delay, but things have been terribly busy around here. So it is a Friday afternoon on a cloudy, raining day, so what a perfect time to record a new episode of Design Cinema. And so this is Feng Zhu speaking, and we're on episode 75, right? So instead of doing a regular draw through, I mean, not draw through, sorry, let's draw with the video game, I thought I'd just do a regular episode this week since I'm a little bit busy and didn't have time to research video games and so forth. So I hope to get another let's draw in the next episode, maybe 76, all right? So, all right, man, let's just jump into what we're gonna do this episode. So I'm gonna cover the kind of spectrum of thumbnail generation. It's something that is done pretty much by pretty sure by all concept artists out there, but it is one of those things that's sort of hidden from the pipeline. At least on the internet, you just generally don't see this kind of stuff often. Most of you guys surf the internet will see the final results of what most designers do, and same thing when you buy art of books and these kind of things. They're kind of showing you the pretty stuff, right? Because that's what sells books and gets the audience going, which is the final drawings and paintings. So thumbnails are often ignored, even though they're probably the most one of the most important vital aspects of the design pipeline. So I thought I'll take this episode and kind of generate a kind of a what I normally do for a project, that kind of amount of thumbnails, and show you guys how we choose that, what shapes works, what shape don't, and take the ones that work and kind of polish it to a presentation level. All right, let's go through the couple of areas of thumbnails and why they're important, and as designers, why we need to do them. So this is also something we're covering right now with our students at the school, because especially I find nowadays with the internet, with a lot of artwork out there for students to see, they tend to get trapped in this little circle of must produce good art. I must produce drawing, and design or the idea itself sometimes take a back seat. So as an instructor, when I see the stuff up on the walls that when the students are presenting, if you actually break down the paintings and some of the renderings down, sometimes the idea is not that fresh. It's just like, I've seen that before. That's just it's almost like another version of somebody else's concept art. So in those terms, as a designer, that's not good, because clients find us to generate IPs, intellectual properties. They look for us not for our artistic skills, but they look for us for our design skills. So where does design come from? That comes from your imagination, your exposure to the world, and how you put those shapes and forms together. And so as a designer, we have to spend quite a bit of time thinking, right? And I want to stress that one more time, thinking about what you are going to put down paper before you commit to the rendering and the pretty, what we call in the industry, sexing things up a bit for the clients, right? So this part, what I'm doing right now on the paper, on the canvas, is actually the part the client's actually paying you to do, right? It's just that these are thumbnails and they're kind of loose and you can't show them to clients, but the idea is actually captured at this very early stage. So we also have to do a little bit of art direction. Okay, so let me just slow down a bit and talk about one at a time what thumbnails are for. So let's talk about one, thumbnails, right? Idea generation. So it allows us to do things really quick, right? To do a rendering, say one spaceship, before I even get to that, what am I drawing, right? So I decided to do some spaceships because space games seems to be quite popular right now. There's like Chris Roberts coming in with the Star Citizen. There's a couple of other space games coming up. The one where you explore the planet. Forgot what the name of the game is called. But spaceships are kind of cool and they're kind of easy since I'm short on time. I'll draw something that's not super challenging to do. So I'm gonna just tackle some spaceships. But I actually end up doing alien spaceships versus these kind of Terran spaceships because they're kind of generic, which kind of defeats the purpose of generating new ideas. So I ended up doing some kind of a little bit different looking spaceships. So back to topic. So thumbnails, right? They're fast. They allow us to draw a lot of ideas, capture on paper without kind of letting any technique or artistic things get in the way. Even things like fundamentals, they get in the way. Like you can't design while you're have to be focusing on, okay, here's vanishing points, here's the 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, make sure my foreshortening is correct, here's the box, here's the grid. When you have that many restrictions, your ideas are actually coming out faster than you putting down fundamentals on paper. So of course fundamentals things are important because that makes your drawing look good, but in the early stage of thinking, you almost want to ignore those kind of things and just go purely for the idea itself. Even in this case, I'm drawing perspective. You don't even need to do that. If you're practicing at home, just draw front view, side view, whatever's the easiest drawings. And the thing you have to be very confident in is that these things, you don't have to show it to nobody. You're doing it for yourself. You do as many as you want, drawing a sketchbook, drawing on crappy paper, drawing on copy paper, drawing a nice sketchbook, doesn't really matter as long as you're out there generating ideas. Because once you have that, then you got it going. That's the thing you want to bring to a painting or a rendering or a nice line drawing, which is the idea itself. Especially nowadays with so many IPs out there, so many studios looking for original IPs, it's getting harder and harder because there's so many ways you could do a spaceship, so many ways you could do a space marine, so many ways you could do a mech. But studios are looking to you to bring them the one that's going to stand out from the crowd and get their IP, shown to the audience. They go, wow, that's refreshing. That idea is very, very cool. So that's tricky. And thumbnails, again, is one of those things that helps us bring those ideas down. All right, so let's talk about two about thumbnails, which is, in this case, how many are you going to do per page? That's some of those questions that the students come up with, which is like, I could do thumbnails forever. And it's true. You could draw these for the entire day and end up with hundreds of them. But of course, ideas, once you have enough, you have the ones that you think is going to work for your project, well, you can stop at that point. You as a designer must make that decision yourself. In this case, what I usually do, even in a professional sense, when I'm doing work, I time my thumbnails to a certain time slot. So I'll give myself, say, 2 hours, maybe 1 hour, to generate as many ideas as I can. And whatever I got within those 1 or 2 hours is the one I got to go forward with. This is because of tight deadlines. In freelance, you have to turn things in within a certain time scope. So I cannot devote too much time, even though it is such an important aspect of the pipeline. You still have to save enough time for the prettying up part. The part I talked about earlier, the pretty renderings and drawings and stuff like that. But that's just the way industry goes. Now, if you're working in-house or you're doing this on your own, then slow down. I tell our students all the time, slow the thumbnail thinking part down. Don't draw generic stuff for 3 thumbnails are all generic and then take the generic stuff and start spending 18 hours finishing them. Instead, I'd rather them spend 18 hours doing really fresh ideas, things that are thought out, things that are thought through, things that are not derivative art of somebody else's, and then spend a few hours rendering that, right? So let me jump to the video here real quick. You can see I skipped ahead a little bit because I think you guys get bored with me drawing everything over and over. So I skipped about half an hour in real time of just drawing spaceships, and you can just see almost an evolution of these shapes going from the Terran shapes slowly into this kind of seashell inspired alien spaceship. I just started drawing and these shapes started coming out. And this is again, this should be the third point of when doing thumbnails, is that your ideas evolve. When you're thinking 1 or 2 things on a paper, you tend to think about detail, right? I watch students work. If they don't think early, what happens is they get devoted to a single drawing very early on, and they immediately go into details. They're starting to draw the eyes and drawing the teeth and making things all perfect. But the idea itself at that point sometimes is not even good yet. It's still very generic, it's very derivative, but yet they're already hunkered down. And because they have devoted time to the details, at this point they don't want to give up the drawing. They don't want to throw it away. They're like, oh man, I already spent 3 hours on this drawing. The idea is not so good, but since I'm 3 hours into it, might as well just continue it, right? That's kind of how the human mind works. What a thumbnail allows you to do is, like, you generate one idea. It took you, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to generate one of these sketches. You could throw that away. You could morph that into another one, another 3-4 minutes. Now you morph to another one. And so your ideas is actually evolving over time, and you start to refine your own ideas. And on top of that, you start to get some happy coincidence, right? Like we say, happy accidents, because you might accidentally draw a shape, or 2 shapes come together, or 2 thumbnails jam together, or you're a slip of a pen. And these things all start to morph and add, like in biology, right? Mutations. Your shapes is basically mutating over time. And you're finding designs that, wait, that looks pretty cool, man. This one totally works. And if you only generated 1 or 2 drawings, these things might ever not come out in front of you, right? And you, as visual artists, we have to see these things in front of us. So I could think all day about alien spaceships, but until I actually devoted that sketch down to paper, I'm not actually executing or solving that design problem until I draw it down. So thumbnails, again, is great for that kind of stuff. You can just generate as many as you want and let your idea morph over time. So here I'm restricted by time. I'm running under a clock about an hour. But during my student days back in our center, I remember just staying up late, drawing drawing. I couldn't stop because it gets quite addictive because you're just creating ideas on your own. These are all your creations, and yet you get addicted to like, man, I gotta stop drawing thumbnails, otherwise I end up with 4 or 5 pages of these, and it's gonna be pretty hard to narrow the good designs down. But having that is a good problem. That's not a bad problem, because if you have a lot of good ideas, hey, you could turn in maybe 2 or 3 to the clients, and you still got 10 more to go, for the next round. So in this case, I'm just trying to fill the paper, try to get the since I have some time, and the OCD part of me wants to fill out every corner of this paper to not leave it blank. So I'm gonna go ahead and just draw as many ideas as I can. And sometimes the negative space also creates shapes. If you have a triangle in a corner that's open, maybe I'll draw a spaceship that fits that into that corner. So. All right, so let's talk about number 5 or something like that, for some of the tips why thumbnails are important. And that is to allow the team to see your ideas very, very early on. And this is more important if you're working in the industry, because everyone's making money, everyone's getting paid per time, so you don't want to waste nobody's time. You don't want to waste yours, you don't want to waste your art directors, and certainly you don't want to waste the project's delivery time. So during thumbnail stage, especially if you're in-house, you can just call your art directors over and tell them, hey man, check out what I'm doing. Here's a bunch of thumbnails. What do you think? And pretend looking at this page, art director comes over right now and go, dude, all of these sucks. And then so what? This is only about half an hour, something like that, into the day, right? So it's like 9:30 or 10:30 in the morning. You still got your coffee barely sipped, and you could kill the project at this point, or kill this design direction, and move on to something else. And nobody gets pissed. The time's not wasted. You save this for a rainy day for something else. Maybe you could come back to it, and you generate new ones. Or in the case in which it works, art director comes over. It's 10:30. They're like, dude, these are going in the right direction. Do a few more. Let me take another look, and we'll pick a few and move forward for that. And then think about how awesome that is, because your design's already approved. Okay, your morale is probably already much higher, because it's 10:30 in the morning, and your design's already approved pretty much at that point, and the rest of your day is already set, because once you pick the 3 or 4 thumbnails to finish for the rest of the day, your schedule is already done. You're like, okay, I got 8 hours left in a work day. I'll devote 2 hours each. My day is set. Put some music on and start cranking. So I believe this is a technique that again, most of us use in this business. It's common sense, to design with ideas already down versus designing as you go. So, and that is one of those things that I mentioned earlier. Some of our students fall into that trap in which they forego design and go for artistic finish first. And as a designer, we have to wear the designer hat first, right? Imagine you have the caps on your head. The first cap you put on is a designer cap. Spend the time. Who cares about artistic stuff? Who cares about quality? Who cares about fundamentals? Who cares about all those things? The only thing you care about at this point, idea, design. What are you doing? Is it cool? Is it fresh? Is it entertaining people? Is it new? Is it bringing something interesting to the table, right? Do that first, and then take off that designer hat. Now I gotta put on the artistic hat, and that's when you bring in your fix the fundamentals, do the renderings, do the pretty stuff, get everything nice and presentable to the client. So those are 2 hats we wear, and since we work in the design industry, we have to wear our designer hat first. So now, nothing wrong with just drawing beautiful drawings to do these things. However, in the business that I'm in, clients don't hire us or pay us to do pretty drawings. I mean, that is, and I think I mentioned that several times in the past episodes. Our job here is not to make pretty drawings. The designers could care less. I mean, the clients could care less. That you drew it like the painterly style, or this kind of style, or line drawing, whatever. What they're actually hiring studios for, or at least IP generation studios, is the idea. They want to know that, okay, we're making the next space opera, Wing Commander-ish kind of game, and we want some alien spaceships. What they want is like, what do those ships look like? Is it going to be, copying somebody else's thing? Is it going to make us stand out? Is it so unique that when we release the screenshot, the audience out there are going to be like, holy, this is awesome, man! I can't wait to play this game. And that's what they're hiring to do. So yeah, so that's why this is so cool. And number 6, I think we're on 6 now, right? Morale, which I mentioned many times in the past. Morale is so important being a designer, because our job is hard. It looks fun from the outside. We're always drawing stuff, but actually it is really stressful, because we're always asked to come up with something new, and if you don't come up with something new, the clients are not happy, nobody's happy, and your morale drains. So morale and stress go hand in hand when you're working in this business. So by having thumbnails, what it does, at least for me, is that it allows you to see your ideas morph and go, man, I think this I'm getting something. Something's happening. This design's gonna work. So what happens is your morale starts to get boosted because imagine you're drawing a single drawing, and I'm focusing just on the head, get into the shoulders, get into the chest, and at this point I'm like, oh man, this is not so good. This drawing's not good, and the design looks generic. Your morale's gonna take a little dip, and you go, okay, I'm gonna start over again. I'm gonna start with another drawing, and then you spend another hour drawing the head, drawing the shoulder, and they're still not looking good. Now your morale's gonna take a major dip, and then you're like, okay, time for a break, play some video games or whatever, and there goes the day. You know what I'm saying? So because you give up on the sketches, you spend way too long trying to draw details and not focusing on the global ideas. And if you don't get something out of those 2 hours, your morale could take a huge hit. And these are things again we observe from our students. Those who focus too much on detail first, they run into these problems in which they get 3-4 hours into it and realize that their idea is actually not so good, and they give up on it. They don't want to render it because what's the point? Render it, no matter how pretty it is, it's not going to really do anything. So for me, morale number 6 is really important, and I think number 7 is just low stress, which has to do with morale, but low stress. When drawing thumbnails, like I mentioned, no worries about fundamentals and all those kind of things. You're almost drawing like you were a kid, going back to when you're like 8-9 years old or something like that, drawing the back on your homework. That's pretty much what thumbnails feel like to me. Even today, I've been in this business almost 20 years now. When I'm doing thumbnails, it still feels like that childhood time when you watch the movie or finish the video game and it's just drawing for fun. And that's really what we want as well in a thumbnail. We want to capture that attitude that you had when you were young, when your brain is just on overdrive in terms of thinking and imagination and getting lost in the world that you're creating. And because thumbnails is loose and thumbnails not meant to be shown to anybody, these are very private type of drawings, you could just completely free form and just draw whatever you want. And I know earlier I did mention that you do show these to art directors, but when you're working with good art directors, those who could read designs, right? Yeah, they understand that. They're not going to be like, dude, your thumbnail's out of perspective, dude, or dude, I don't get it. Good art directors totally understand because they themselves most likely do thumbnails as well. So that's why it's low stress. You could listen to good music. In fact, when I was doing this, I just had all sorts of soundtracks on, and just totally zoning out. The world just goes away. Shut down the internet, shut down email, shut down your phone, put on some music, and just get lost in whatever you're doing. And in this case, I was listening to a couple of kind of epic soundtracks to try to get myself into a Wing Commander, that type of mood, Star Wars, that type of thing. And it was totally fun. Stress level extremely low. And by the time I got to, I think, my 5th, 6th sketch, in which I start finding that alien seashell shape, then number 5 comes in. The morale starts boosting up, and then you're just having a good time at this point. And these are things, even when I was a student, I had to, this kind of stuff I learned over time. No one really taught this stuff to me. A little bit of it, but not really why. Why do we do thumbnails? What's the importance of that? Until you started working and started realizing, man, this job is stressful, and if you don't use this technique, you could work yourself into a little corner, which I mentioned earlier, by drawing tight drawings or not focusing on the idea and committing too early to a painting, or not committing any design at all, and you're just kind of blabbing paint on a page. And 20-30 minutes later, you're like, what the heck am I putting down? This makes no sense. The perspective sucks, the design sucks, there's no lighting. Those are things you run into. So then that's why we do thumbnails. And this also works for environments. It works for characters. It works for everything. In fact, if you guys find this episode interesting, I have no idea. If you guys find it interesting, maybe I'll do a follow-up with Soft Surface, in which you do some characters or creatures and so forth with same thing, generating a bunch of thumbnails. And I do want you guys to try this. Go home, or not, you guys are probably home. Take a piece of paper and pen or Photoshop and just draw. Shut down the world and just draw whatever you want. And come up with something when you draw. Give you some ideas versus looking at whatever the internet has and just go, okay, that guy drew this, I'm gonna draw that too. Draw your own stuff. Come up with some fresh ideas and try that. It's very refreshing to do so, and that's something we try to push our students here all the time, because we know they're also active on the internet. They see what's being posted. They see what films are coming out, and it's human nature to kind of draw other people's stuff. It's kind of fun. But as a designer, we have to differentiate. At what point are we doing our job? At what point are we just drawing for the sake of entertaining ourselves? And when we're doing our job, we have to make sure that the clients are getting something that worth worth paying for, essentially, right? Because they are offering you salary or payment for in exchange for your ideas. And if you're just exchanging them, essentially fan art type of drawings of other people's stuff, they're not going to be very happy with that. So yeah, so thumbnails helps with that. Let me try to think of other things that are helpful in terms of what thumbnails are for. Oh, another one, number 8, which is a ton of ideas in a short amount of time that you can actually save. So I briefly mentioned this earlier because we're not going to render all these up. There's like what, 30, 40 of these things on the page at this point. We're not going to finish all these. That's way too many stuff to draw. At most, we're going to do about 3, maybe 5, take those to a finish. But the rest is still your ideas, right? They're still part of the project. So what happens if the clients like these ideas, for example, you can still go back and pick a couple of other ones to finish up, because within this thumbnail group, I'm starting to narrow down the language, the seashell spaceship language. But I actually altered the functionality of these ships. So you can see some are vertical, some are kind of horizontal, some are very, very long, some are kind of stubby. So I'm playing around with all sorts of proportions. So in the case in which the clients like these ideas and go, hey, the seashell spaceship thing is looking pretty cool, for the next day, I can just take a few more of these thumbnails and finish those up. Low stress, and high morale, because you already solved the design problem very early on. So that's another huge benefit of having thumbnails. In fact, I've actually even gone back years later to thumbnails I generated, like in 1998 or something like that, and thought they're still pretty okay, right? I mean, the forms are still working even today. So you could take those forms and just draw it up, And if you never show to the clients, these are actually essentially yours, especially if you're on a freelance project or something like that. You could be going off a tangent and on your page generate some ideas that might not even pertain to the project. In that case, it doesn't fit for client work, right? You don't want to show stuff that doesn't fit their project, but that doesn't mean that the designs are bad, right? In this case, maybe I start doing some very, let's see, super organic spaceships, things that have tentacles on it or something like that. And I know the clients probably don't want that. In that case, I'm not going to delete the thumbnail from my drawing. I just keep it there. I'll keep it there for something else. Or maybe the clients come back and want that. And if they don't, I could save it for something else, my own personal project. Maybe there's another client project coming up that I could morph that into something else, because all of this is idea. And since you're doing this so quick, you're not eating into your client's time, right? You're not like taking their work and like refurbishing it. That's not the point here. The point is that you're just generating ideas. It's like writing down a bunch of paragraphs on a page and you're picking out the words that you like from that paragraph. So same type of thing. It allows you to just save a bunch of ideas early on the page. So, and I just thought of another thing, number 9. Are we on number 9? I think number 9. Number 9 is allow you to compare or cross-check your designs from one to another. Since you have everything on a single page, it's so much easier to check against your own ideas, right? Because if you draw in a big drawing or if you have a single drawing, you can't even do that because you only have one thing to do. If you have two and they're both big, you still have to kind of look back and forth. In the case like this, because they're all on the page all at the same time, you can look over and get ideas and go check, hey, this shape is working, this one's not working. Since this is not working, I'm gonna ignore that for my next sketch, right? It's kind of like a refinement phase while you're drawing. So, and that kind of goes to number 10, which is you could build off of ideas from earlier. For example, you could draw something that's not going anywhere. Like, okay, this drawing is not working, this thumbnail is not working. Then you start a new drawing, but you could kind of look out the corner of your eye and see a shape that you might like. You're like, that overall thing don't work, but I do like what this part of the shape is doing from the previous sketch, and I'm going to bring that over to this one. So that kind of go hand in hand with metamorphizing or evolving your sketch. But by having those drawings on the page, you can keep your eye refreshed. In this case, for example, if you look at the screen, on the upper, I'm drawing this kind of very long ship, right? On the upper left, you can see kind of a seashell, kind of those very ancient looking seashell inspired spaceship. I love the way that curves underneath like that. So that right now on this long one, I'm actually morphing the same shape into this long version, except I'm just stretching it out. Versus going vertical, I'm going horizontal. And that's completely being built by the drawing that's next to it. So if that drawing wasn't there, maybe I wouldn't catch that idea or shape and won't use it. So this is just a huge benefit when it comes to design, that you keep yourself in check. So let me think, where are we on? Number 11 now? Let's see, what could 11 be? I guess 11 could be, which I didn't do in this case, maybe I'll do next week, which is thumbnails are fun, especially if you keep on a layer. And you can actually do mishmash design, which is quite fun because especially in this case, you look at my spaceships here, they're all drawn in a very similar perspective. Even though they're not very fundamentally correct at this point, the perspective is somewhat the same. They're using the same camera. What you can actually do is you can actually morph, you can squeeze one thumbnail into another one. And maybe I'll show you guys this on the next episode. It's quite fun. And especially for things like these spaceships or say a crazy monster or creature, it works extremely well because you're just slapping one thing on top of the other and you get these mega spaceships or mega creatures just by simply combining your thumbnails into one. Something that it's hard to do when you're drawing a very clean drawing or you only have one drawing. You don't have kind of a way to play with it. In this case, think of all these as Lego pieces or a bunch of toys. And on this page, there's 30 toys right now we're looking at. And you could just take these toys and mishmash it together like Legos. Just stick this one to this part, stick the top of this into that one. You can even lasso pieces of a shape out and cut down to another one. Essentially, we have hundreds of forms already on this page if you think about it that way. Right? Cut a wing off, cut an engine off, cut this part off. And you can make other designs with these shapes. And I've just seen clients do that before. You could give the art director, sometimes the art director says, hey, send me over your thumbnails. And what they'll do is they like certain parts. For example, they like the top of this spaceship. They like the cockpit of this one. They like the wing of that one. And since they're art directors, they know how Photoshop works. They'll go ahead and take that into Photoshop and just kind of mishmash your designs into a new design. And that's such a powerful way to work. And in fact, this is probably done in most product firms as well, in most design firms. I'm pretty sure of it, in which they take designs that are working and just bash it all together to make a new one. And that only works if you have a lot of ideas on the page, right? So let me take a sip of water for a second. Sorry. All right. So hopefully this is helping you guys, especially those who are still learning in the process. This is something that we teach our students quite early on here at the school, because it's again very vital to know what you're drawing, what problem you're solving before you commit to what we call the risk part, right? Right now, this is the brain part. This is using your ideas, imagination. The risk part is using your hand, and clients pay for the imagination part. So the risk we have to do, unfortunately, in a what's my dog's barking? In a perfect world, we could just turn this in and that's it. I mean, that'll be awesome. All our jobs would just be thumbnails. I think most designers would probably agree that would be really, really fun. Because sometimes doing the renderings and doing the photo stuff and doing all that kind of stuff is very time consuming, even though the idea was solved hours ago, in our own heads or in a rough sketch. It's been solved. But of course, the clients can't understand that, so we got to spend a lot of time, painting it nicely and lighting it and do all these kind of things. And there's definitely some fun aspects to that. But in terms of being a pure design, this is the most fun part. So it'd be awesome if in the industry we could just do this all day. But unfortunately, we still have to make it pretty. Otherwise, producer types and these they probably don't want to see thumbnails being done for their projects. So let's talk about a little bit of the technical part of this, how I set this up. So this is just a huge canvas. It's about, I think it's 5,000 by 3,000 or something like that, some large pixel resolution thing. But the thing about thumbnails, the name fits. It's called thumbnails for a reason. We don't want to go too big with each drawing. So if you actually break it down, this is a 5,000 pixel wide image. Each drawing is only about 500 pixels wide, something quite small, right? That's the whole point. It's because we don't want to be trapped early on into details. By keeping the thing small, you can actually still capture major forms and even your secondary detail indication, but due to the pixel resolution, you cannot go in there and draw little cockpits and little nuts and bolts, things that could trap a student early on. They start worrying about oh, am I drawing the door handle correctly or something. That does not matter if your car doesn't even look good. You know what I'm saying? So by doing thumbnails, it prevents you from going off tangent and start focusing on the wrong stuff. Instead, you only focus on the big shapes, which actually should be tip number 12, right? Actually, tip number 12 should be tip number 1, which is thumbnails. The whole point of it is to allow you to capture the forms and the big picture early on. It ignores details and ignores everything else. It just wants you to see the big shapes. And once you have those shapes, then the rest is much, much easier, because drawing details actually is not the hardest thing to do. Doing this stuff is. So okay, go back to technical stuff. So 5,000, and find a brush that you like to sketch with. The default round is not bad for sketching. And also the default airbrush. If you take the default airbrush as is in Photoshop, and shrink it down so it's only about, I think, about 5 pixels wide or something, it also makes a very, very good drawing brush because the airbrush is soft versus default round is a little bit harder on the edge there. When you take the default airbrush and shrink it way, way down, it works like a very smooth pencil. And it looks great. Maybe next episode I'll draw it in the soft airbrush. In this case, I'm sketching with a calligraphy brush that came with Photoshop. It just feels quite nice, but it only makes thick lines going one direction. It makes thin lines going the other direction. So I have to constantly flip the canvas to achieve line weight. But otherwise, it feels good on paper. But again, brushes, nothing to do with anything, right? You can use whatever brush you want. What you want to do is just pick a brush that you feel comfortable in Photoshop. And if you don't feel comfortable drawing in Photoshop, don't do it. Draw on paper. Get yourself a sketchbook. And this is something I encourage our students as well, is that don't use the tool as a way to excuse yourself from working, right? Don't say like, oh, Photoshop doesn't sketch well, so I'd rather not sketch in Photoshop. Well, draw on paper then, you know. All right, so now moving to the selecting phase. So we have about, what, 20, 30, something like that, thumbnails on the page. So what I generally do is I take this page and bring some kind of focal point to the thumbnails that are working for myself. This is a pipeline step. You don't have to do this at all. I do this for a reason because sometimes I'm involved with several projects. I'm also running companies on the during my workday. So sometimes you do a thumbnail and then you get called into a meeting for an hour, and your brain is completely like filled with something else. And when you come back to your thumbnail, you tend to forget, oh, what direction was I going again? You tend to forget. So what this does is it kind of marks the stuff I want to bring to a finish because there's something about these designs that I like. So right now in this case, I'm just using some white to wash over the drawing to pick out the ones I like. It's a very fast process. So then now I could, if I want to walk away from this and come back and know exactly where I stopped. Especially imagine you have like 4 or 5 pages to this. You have so many things on the page. You're like, what am I looking at? And of course you could find your own drawings again. It's that makes sense, right? It's like you're not gonna go pick the ones you don't like, but it just saves time. You don't have to kind of look through each one and go, oh, where was I? It just cuts down a few minutes of time, right? In this case, I even marked it with a little arrow, just to remind myself where they are. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take these and copy and paste it and arrange it for presentation. This is something I want to talk about. Again, I'm showing you guys the whole pipeline going from zero essentially into something that's presented on a wall. In a video game company or even in film companies, most stuff we show are printed out. I'm pretty sure I talked about this in the past, but even so, let's just bring it up again. But before I do that, sip of water. Hold on a second. All right, so where was I? Okay, talking about prints. In most companies, things are presented in print because print is easy. You print it on a printer, you could drop it off to anyone's desk, you could stick it on any part of the wall, and everyone on the team could see it, right? If you're viewing stuff on screens, it's just a hassle. Like some guy sitting in front of it, fingers touching the screens, and artists don't want their screens touched by oily fingers and all that kind of stuff. So most things are printed. So when I'm presenting things, I always try to present it well, compositionally on paper. So in this case, I'm taking my thumbnails and actually spending quite a bit of time. This process in real time took a good 10 minutes or so to arrange things. Just trying to find a negative space. Why do this? Why just print it out? Because it looks good. Good presentation helps sell your designs. A good package sells products. It works the same way here. Is that if you already have good designs and you back it up with good presentation, well, that's double win. In fact, you can actually make designs not so good, presented well, still sell. So in this case, it's just trying to make the page look good when I print it. So in most cases, we print here in Singapore, we print an A3. In the United States, it's probably 11 by 17. So somewhat like a 16 by 9 ratio, right? A little bit wide. So I'm trying to arrange these spaceships or these thumbnails in a wide format. You actually do this at the end. You don't have to do it at this point, but this is just habit. I have to do things early on, like get this stuff all figured out, so that way I have to think about it later. Later on, all I gotta do is just focus on the rendering part and the drawing part, and not worry about how to arrange the page. Right. So you can see here, I'm just mathematically trying to where does it go? And this stuff actually takes quite a bit of time. It gets pretty frustrating. That sometimes I mentioned to our students, I wish someone would write a plugin that could take the diameter or the outer parameters of these drawings and read and how to fit it into Photoshop automatically. That's completely doable. With algorithms. But unfortunately, I don't think that Photoshop or Adobe finds that a very useful tool. But maybe in the future they'll have something. All right, so here they are grouped. All right, so here I have a super long format here, which will work really well on a 11 by 17, and then the other one will work really well for an A3. Okay, there's my dog again. It's Friday. A lot of people coming in and out of our company. All right, as you can see here, here's the print. Made the background black in Photoshop, so you guys can see what the paper will be. And now just rearranging. Right. So right now I'm not skipping anything. This is exactly how I do my real work, and how our students do their presentations as well. Spend quite a time presenting. Right. So the top one here is 11, will fit 11 by 17. This one here will be for A3. Arranging, shrinking things down. Also getting the orientation of the spaceships to look kind of cool. Actually, for the final, I actually combined, because I don't have enough time to finish all 8 of these. I ended up doing 5. So what I ended up doing was taking the super long one that you see right there on the very bottom right there, the super long spaceship, and kind of slapped it to the bottom of the other 4 on the A3. So that way I get 5 drawings in there instead of 4. So. All right, so what I was going to talk about, yeah. So let me know if this episode is interesting. Then I could do another one for soft surface. Do some dragons or something. I don't know. Just so you guys can see that thumbnails is not exclusive to spaceships or anything like that. It's completely universal, useful for anything you want. And then we'll get back to video game again. So. Yeah, I gotta find something to do. I wanted to do Oddworld actually, the game, but the new version just came out, and it's doing quite well. So I thought, let's not step on anyone's toes here, because that game is doing really well. It looks really awesome. Let's not do a Let's Draw of a game that just came out. So I've been trying to go back and find something much older. Yeah, you guys have given me plenty of suggestions, so I just need to find time to record the episodes, because those take a little bit of time, because redesign takes a little bit of time to research and things like that. Whereas this episode, I could just start recording and just generate ideas. But treat it like a real project. Yeah, I don't have to do too much before thinking, because this is blue sky spaceship designs versus a Let's Draw, which we have to take something that exists and make it cooler. That takes more time. So let's go back to this. So yeah, here rearranging, and right now this is going to be a pretty low res image, and once I have the page arranged, you can see I'm spending still on this, right? Again, real time, took about 10 minutes to do this process. So I'll rest this back up to about 5,000. So now the image is going to be much bigger. They'll increase about 4 times in size, and I'll probably do that right here. You can see that. So 5,000, and then bring the other one into 5,000 as well. Boom, right? So now they've increased by 4x each spaceship, that is, and that allows me to now detail them to a certain extent. Now let's talk about that, right? So we moved from, let's talk about the phases, just as a refresher. So phase 1 was idea generation, rough, thumbnails, keep it small, keep it loose, forget the fundamentals, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff you don't need. Okay, phase 2 right now I'm presenting, putting in a page so it looks nice. Now phase 3 is detail. Now let's keep this project in line here. What are we doing exactly? This is blue sky idea pitch at this point, right? These designs might or might not make it past this stage, and that's the real world of concept design, right? What you guys see in the books and these kind of things, for every drawing you see, there's probably 10 to 20 drawings that you did not see. I mean, when I worked on Star Wars, I saw a bookshelf that had pretty much all the drawings ever created for that movie. Dates way back to 1977, right? 1976. There's literally thousands of drawings in there, done by Joe Johnston, Ralph McCurry, and all these guys. Thousands. But the art of books only printed like a few hundred. That's because concept art works that way. Is that you have to go through phases of design, phases of ideas. And right now we're at phase 1. This is like the first time you're showing, in this case, seashell-based spaceships. Now the clients could just go, man, these sucks, let's kill it. And these drawings go into oblivion, they disappear. Or they could be like, hey, this direction is good, let's explore a bunch more. And you might explore this for an entire week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. And by then, you've generated probably another 100 drawings. So since this is design phase 1, I don't want to commit too deeply into super tight details and super refined details, I guess, in textures and all those kind of things, because it's not that important. What's going to sell this design at this point is the idea and the overall feeling of it, the overall material, the overall finish, but not exactly like the cockpit window. The client's not going to be like, oh, I really like this design, but since the cockpit window is a triangle, not a circle, this whole thing goes away. And that's not really going to happen. They're either going to like the idea and refine it, or they don't like the idea. And it's not usually because of a detail. So since that's the case, I don't want to spend a lot of time detailing everything out at this stage. Okay, I'm going to stress that very importantly at this stage, because this is phase one. If this was for phase two, meaning that the clients already like the designs and they want this to be refined, then of course you have to be much more slower, clean stuff up. You got to have your details make sense, all the stuff makes sense. But at this point, phase one, not the most important. In fact, most clients don't want that either, because especially if you're freelancing, doing clean details means it costs time, and time for them, it means money. So a lot of clients will tell you, hey, we just want these to be pretty rough. But what they mean by rough though is not like sloppy. You can't just be like blah, bunch of sketches and go, here it is, and they don't want that. What they meant is give us nice looking drawings, presentable drawings, but don't go freaking 2 days drawing a single drawing either. You know what I'm saying? They want like 6, 7, 8 drawings a day, that type of thing. And so you save, where do you cut time down? You cut it down on the level of finish. You cut down the details. You cut down the refinement. You cut down the, is every nut and bolt drawn perfectly? Those things are not vital at this stage. So I'm showing you how I sketch or clean up one of these drawings, and you can see that it's pretty sloppy at this point. It's not the cleanest thing, but it's cleaner than a thumbnail. Just enough for the clients to buy the idea. And later I'll finish these up a little bit of marker and things like that, and you'll see that the final presentation gets there enough. It gets to the clients the idea what these are meant to do. So, and that's, again, so those are things that's usually hidden in the the art of books and these kind of things that you guys, especially if you're a student who is not being in this industry, you might not know the entire scope of what concept art is like, and we're in product making, dude, I'm studying a lot today, man. Let me get a drink real quick, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Friday, it's been a long week, so excuse my crazy stuttering and can't talk, blah blah blah. Okay, take a deep breath, let's get back to talking. So the part that's not exposed is that we're making products, and making products means changes. Things gets tossed out, things gets refined, things gets brought back into production, tossed back out of production, back into production, things go back and forth, people get frustrated, everyone wants what they want, all sorts of stuff happens in production. And as a concept designer, you're at the tip of all of that, you know what I'm saying? Because if you look at video games or films, what drives a lot of it? The visuals, you know what I'm saying? And the concept guys are responsible for at least the design part of the visuals. So you're gonna get a lot of back and forth on these things. So, and you learn where to cut time, where you don't cut time, where you can spend your time, where you don't spend your time. And for a thumbnail, since we're doing it on thumbnails, the idea and the shapes is the most important at this stage, right? So as you're drawing at home, now that doesn't mean it goes sloppy. Don't like wiggle bunch of nasty lines everywhere, because that looks like you're just impatient, right? There's a big difference between professional execution with the time limitation versus I'm trying to finish this thing up because I don't give a crap about what this looks like and just gonna slap drawing everywhere and ignore everything that's good about being an artist. That's not good either, because a client will see right through that and go, hey man, you're trying to rush through my project, you're not even caring what you do. Because for us, this part is fun. This is the part you fall in love with. So even though we're limited by time, we still want to do a good job. So, and at this stage, I've removed the designer hat, the hat we're wearing for the first half of this video. And now I put on the artist hat. And the artist hat is the part in which I got to bring back all the stuff you learn in school. Like, where's the horizon line? Where's the vanishing points? Where's the balance of 1, 2, 3 reads? Where's the focal point? What are the secondary detail? What are the third level details? And that's how I refine these things down. So the first level detail, of course, is the giant shape itself. The second level detail for this spaceship is the cockpit, that little circle below it, some of the engine compartments. And third level details are your cut lines, your little joints, the little gun, those kind of things. So that's the kind of thing I'm using my artist hat as I wear that to balance. And later, once all of these are finished to this state, the artist hat continues, in which we work out a little bit of the rendering. But this part is now quite relaxed. The stress is, honestly speaking, it's almost gone at this point, because I have my designs. At worst comes to worst, I could even show this, do you know what I'm saying? Because you have designs. But so the stress is gone. So here it is, fast forward a little bit. You can see all 5 of these now cleaned up to a okay stage. They're not super tight or anything like that, but definitely enough for someone who's not from the art side to understand this. Art directors definitely know it, but now you can show it to producers. You can show it to basically designers, writers, and these types that might not necessarily be artists themselves, but they will definitely understand if you bring a presentation to about this level. So yeah, so now the only thing we gotta do is put some renderings. Now at this stage, you got to show these. You don't have to finish it up, especially if you're in-house. For freelance, this is probably a little bit not finished. Who knows? If you work with a cool client, they could probably look at it. But in-house, this is completely presentable at this point. Print it out, slap it on the wall, done. Move on to something else or start refining these to the next level. So, but I'm just gonna throw in a little bit of rendering. This has been covered a few times in the past, so I don't want to dwell too much on that. I'm just gonna kind of jumpstart it and then fast forward it to what it looks like when we're done. So first, I'm just gonna lasso everything to create a mask. Having a mask is very helpful because later if you want to snap textures, do some painting on top, the mask prevents you from painting outside of your shape. It just kind of, it takes a little bit of time to set up, a good 5-10 minutes or so to set up, but once you have that, it saves way more time in the back end. And also to make the mask, it's much faster to just lasso everybody and then delete out whatever didn't work versus trying to paint into it, right? So what I mean by that is like the line drawing is there and then you paint in the paint to make the mask. That process, for me at least, I find that to be much slower. The faster, just draw a big lasso, fill it in, boom, clean up whatever is edge, and then that's it. So this process is relatively quick. So, and once we have the mask, then we could do the dark, we could do the lights, do some textures, do some highlights, and put some notes, and then we call that a day. All right, let me take another drink here. And what you're seeing here is very, very typical of something that goes on in probably hundreds of thousands of concept or entertainment studios out there. Or refinement from thumbnail to presentation, and this stuff will be printed, slap onto a wall. And most places they'll have an art wall somewhere. If you go to Ubisoft or EA and these kind of studios, there's always an art wall somewhere in the studio, generally somewhere where a lot of people could see it. And there's always going to be people hovering over that because designers obviously look at that, producers look at it, other artists look at it, 3D artists look at it, animators look at it, texture guys look at it, everyone, and even the riggers, they all look at your concept art. So this stuff generally just print it out and slap it on the wall. What I like to do is in the morning, especially if I'm working in-house somewhere, I see like a hole on the wall. It's like, all right, there's like a 4x4 area here that's blank. At the end of the day, I want to fill that sucker up. And when I was younger, I was totally obsessed with doing things like that, where the studio's like, okay, this is the art wall right now, there's like nothing on it, please fill it. And I was like, dude, I want to fill this wall by the end of the week, that type of motivation. And it's fun because you just like stay up late and just keep cranking and then you fill that wall, and they're like, oh, now I gotta give you another wall to put stuff up. And then within like a few months, you have like half the studio covered up in concept art. And that's always quite fun because you go in and just see your stuff, and it's like you're building your own morale, right? Whenever your morale is low, you're like, look how much drawings I've done, let's cover another wall. It's a good morale booster. And two, it's a good conversation. A lot of people go to these walls and look at your designs and discuss, and your designs are always part of the conversation. So I find that to be quite fun. Okay, back to this. So continue creating the mask. But don't do it for ego or anything like that, right? So this confidence and boosting morale is very different than, dude, everyone look at my drawings because I'm the best or something like that. That's not good. That's people gonna get annoyed by that kind of stuff. So there's more for personal morale. All right. So even do it if no one sees it. That's the thing. If you look at other artists, they also hang these stuff up in their own house, in their own studios, which we also encourage our students to do. Is that they take all their homework, especially the ones that were successful, print it out and just put it on your wall. Right? It might look pretty geeky, but you're a student, you're an artist, you're learning. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Fill your wall with concept art, inspiration art, whatever. Because all of that is actually for personal morale boosting, for inspiration, and just keeps you going forward. So, like I mentioned earlier, this business, especially if you guys are students trying to get into this business, it is stressful. It is high tension, high stress. Deadlines freaking all the time, all sorts of stuff. Clients wanting this, wanting that, and you have to find a way to keep your sanity, going for these kind of things. And that really comes down to morale. So if you're in a good mood, these days I'm super. I've been in this business long enough that nothing really phases me. So just very, very happy. But I remember back in maybe 2002, 2001, you get into these days in which you're just under so much stress of like, oh my goodness, you know what I'm saying? It's never ending, one project to another. Sometimes you're doing 4 or 5 freelance projects at one time, and you just need something to boost your morale. So do whatever it takes to do so. So once you've been in this business long enough, like 10 plus, 15 plus years, it becomes pretty zenned out. You could put up with pretty much whatever stress there is out there. But until then, do things that's going to help you. So hopefully this episode with thumbnails helps you get you part of that. Okay, so here I'm trying something. I actually ended up throwing this away, which is I kind of want to try a white shell, like on a seashell, and the inside is kind of dark, but I end up not liking it. it created too much of a contrast that wasn't quite working with the forms themselves. But just try it. It's fast. And since I have the mask, I just selected the mask and then just use the airbrush to brush the parts that are bright. But you can see it starts creating some funky shapes. I didn't like it. It's too confusing, so I ended up scrapping it. But yeah, but these are things you do with a thumbnail, right? The whole point is that these are meant to be fast. These drawings in real time. Actually, if I didn't speed this video up, the entire process took about, let me think, hour two. I think about 3 hours, close to 4. I think 3 hours and 45 minutes, if I recall, something like that. So that's less than a workday. You know what I'm saying? To get to this point here, to have fun thumbnail. So if I push myself in a workday here, probably end up with something about 8 or 10 something of this drawings, and I don't even have to put all 5 of them on a single page. You could divide up to 3 per A3 page, or 3 per 11 by 17, and print out 3-4 drawings at the end of the day, and that looked pretty good on the wall. That'll be enough of a conversation starter for the team to go over at the end of the day, right? And most production meetings happen around 5-6 o'clock at night. I mean, at the close of the workday, so everyone gets together and go through all the concept art that you've generated. So here I'm going to show you the kind of the finish. Right now I'm actually moving in real time. This part is not fast forwarded, so I could kind of talk it over a bit. Yeah, so I could turn on the mask, and then I'm going to turn on the layer that had the textures. I just kind of spend about 20-30 minutes doing this process. It's pretty fast. Slap some textures, and you can see it's quite loose. It's pretty sloppy in terms of the texture themselves. They're not cleaned, right? But the drawing themselves are cleaned up, so the drawing is not that slapped. Put some notes on it: A, B, C, D, E, F, or A, B, C, D, E, F. Put a human scale. Since we're dealing with spaceships, we wanted the clients to see how big these guys are, and yeah, that's about it. You know, let's open up the original thumbnail. You can see the last one. Boom. Right. So here's where we started, and you can see we only did 5 designs out of the 20, 30 or something like that on the page here, and that leaves us plenty more to do if we ever want to go back and choose another 5, which I think there's a couple in there that could probably work as well. We could present another page. So thumbnails, look how powerful this stuff is. And now we could take this spaceship and drop it into a production painting. We could draw some finished renderings of it. We could do some cutaways of it. There's a lot of stuff we could do with it if the design had moved on to the next stage. So this is again stage 1, idea generation. Super fast, super fun, and hopefully you guys could give this a try as well. You know, just yeah, post it up and you know, see what these look like. And you could get all these from my blog. I'll try to put the thumbnail page up as well, so you guys could go ahead and download that. And I think next week or next episode, I can't promise next week, but next episode I'll try to do a soft surface at the same time. Since I already talked about thumbnail generation, I'll use that episode as an opportunity to cover some question and answers, which I think there's plenty since the last time I've done one. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask that on this channel, and I'll have my staff compile them all together for you guys, and for the next episode we'll do one of those. And since it's that, it should be, hopefully I can record one soon. All right, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Sorry for the lack of a Let's Draw, but something is something, right? There's at least something for you guys to see, and I also get myself out of not producing episode for so long. So thank you guys for your patience, and I will get a new episode up as soon as I can. Until then, enjoy your weekend and have fun drawing as always. So all right, see you guys on the next episode. Okay, bye guys.